I didn't even see her face at first. I just heard the glass hit the floor. Somewhere near the back of the venue, behind a cluster of fake laughter and those go-dofful marketing banners, a wine flute slipped from someone's hand and shattered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered over canapes. The music kept playing. Ironically, some upbeat remix of a Fleetwood Mac song. Then someone muttered, "Is that Wendell?" Another voice whispered, "And who the hell is she?" I didn't break stride. Blythe held my arm the way a queen might hold a sword. Elegant, but not to be underestimated. Her heels echoed against the polished concrete floor, and the scent of something expensive, jasmine and judgment, followed us like a second entrance. People turned. Some smiled. Some recoiled. Some pretended not to notice while obviously noticing. And then the sea of partygoers split. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, but awkwardly. The way people instinctively part when something's about to happen and nobody wants to be too close when it does. And finally, I saw her, Delaney, standing by the drink station in that stupid green velvet dress she once swore she hated, but wore anyway because it makes me feel expensive. Her face, that familiar blend of smugness and detachment I'd stared at across countless silent dinners, was now a locked, frozen portrait of disbelief. Her jaw tensed. Her eyes darted from me to Blythe to me again. She looked exactly like someone watching their carefully balanced house of cards catch a gust of wind. She wasn't ready. She thought I'd crawl away, disappear, mope in silence forever like the sad, safe husband she thought she outgrew. She thought if she sparkled enough in front of her colleagues, no one would ever ask about the man she used to come to these events with. But here I was, not just breathing, thriving, with someone devastatingly beautiful on my arm, and the calm of a man who no longer cared about the damage behind him. You ever see a ghost realize it's the one being haunted? That's the look she gave me, and I hadn't even said a word yet. 48 hours earlier, I was staring at a blue cereal bowl in the sink. That's where it started. It wasn't dirty, not really. Just one faint milk ring at the bottom and a single cornflake stuck to the side like a barnacle. But it had been sitting there since Tuesday, and it was now Friday. Delaney had walked past it a dozen times. I had too. I kept thinking she'd rinse it, maybe say something about it, something normal, like, "I'll get to it in a minute," or "Can you clean that up?" Instead, we both pretended it didn't exist. Like so many other things in our house. That stupid bowl became a metaphor I couldn't shake. I stood there for 20 minutes, still in my work clothes, just staring at it like it might talk back. Maybe explain something to me that my wife wouldn't. I hadn't even known about the party until her sister accidentally mentioned it during a phone call on speaker. Delaney didn't tell me she was going, but she did leave out a dress on the bed the next morning. Something new, sleek, low-cut. The kind of thing she used to say was too much before she stopped caring what I thought. That night, she came home late. I pretended to be asleep. She pretended not to notice I wasn't. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just sit between people. It presses down on them like fog. The next morning, she dropped a hint I wasn't supposed to catch. "Just remember," she said while scrolling through her phone. "If Fernley asks, I told you about the party. You're always forgetting things lately." It wasn't a dig. Not exactly. More like a dismissal. Like I was an aging dog chewing a slipper in the corner, too stupid to correct, but too loyal to leave. I nodded, said nothing, drove to work in a haze of dull rage and powdered donut crumbs. I didn't think about revenge. Not yet. I wasn't built for that kind of thing. But then Blythe called. She wasn't supposed to. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. She'd moved to Oregon, got married, opened a yoga studio or a flower shop or something serene like that. But she was back in town, briefly, and she was bored, she said. Needed a reason to dress up. Wanted something messy but elegant. I almost laughed. I almost said no. But then I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked like someone who spent years being safe for someone who wanted dangerous. I looked like someone who had been waiting for permission to finally be unpredictable. So I said yes. She asked no questions. She didn't need to. "Pick me up at 7, she said. "Make sure they remember your entrance." And just like that, something shifted. I didn't care what Delaney said at the party. I didn't care if she denied everything or blamed me for things I didn't do. I didn't care if she kissed that overfed narcissist with the perfect hair right in front of me. I just wanted her to feel it. The moment when the thing she thought she'd buried stood up, dusted itself off, and smiled. And the best part? I wasn't even mad anymore. That was what scared me. Blythe stepped out of her apartment like she had never once doubted who she was. She wore a scarlet red blazer over a black silk slip dress that shimmered with every step. It wasn't revealing in the obvious way, but it demanded attention, not like she wanted to be watched, but like she expected it. And in that moment, watching her descend the stairs with her short, platinum hair curled slightly at the ends and her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses even though it was nearly sunset, I realized I had no idea who the hell I had agreed to bring with me. "Is this too much?" she asked casually, slipping into the passenger seat of my car like she'd done it 100 times. "For what?" "For turning your wife into a statue," she said, smirking, lips painted the color of dried blood. I didn't answer. She leaned back, kicked off her heels, yes, right there in the seat, and pulled out a small silver flask from her clutch. She took a sip and offered it to me. It tasted like vanilla and lightning. And suddenly, everything about this night felt electric and dangerous and alive. "You ever think," she said between swigs, "that the worst thing you can do to someone isn't scream at them or leave them? What then? It's showing up after they bet on your silence." That line hit harder than the drink. We drove in silence for a bit, but it wasn't awkward. It was loaded, like we were both winding up for something and neither of us fully understood what would happen when the moment came. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. There was something deliberate in her stillness. Blythe had always been magnetic, but this wasn't nostalgia. This was something else. Controlled. Calculated. It didn't fully click until we were halfway to the event. "I looked her up," Blythe said, almost too casually. I blinked. "What?" "Delaney. I looked her up. Your wife. Or whatever she is now." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Why?" "Because you sounded like a man on the edge. And you're not the type to jump alone." That's when it hit me. Blythe didn't come back just to help me look good at a party. She had her own reasons. She always did. She was the kind of woman who carried old secrets in her back pocket and used them like matches when things got cold. "What did you find?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. She turned to me slowly. "Let's just say, I've met the guy she's seeing." My stomach dropped. "You know him?" Blythe tilted her head and smiled in a way that was somehow both elegant and cruel. "Know him? No. I broke him. 2 years ago." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, crossing her legs and slipping her heels back on, "this isn't the first time he's tangled himself in a taken woman. And it won't be the first time he ends up regretting it." The rest of the drive felt like standing on the edge of a storm. I didn't know what Blythe had planned. I didn't know if I was part of it, or just the delivery system. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving someone else's chaos. I was holding the match. The winery wasn't nearly as extravagant as I remembered it. Fernley had sunk a fortune into renovations, but the bones were still the same. Dark wooden beams, high vaulted ceilings, vintage Edison bulbs dangling like sleepy stars over hand-polished oak floors. People were dressed like they were auditioning for a Netflix series about beautiful liars, sharp suits, soft silk, smiles that were too white and too quick. And yet the second Blythe and I walked in, none of that mattered. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in the air, like everyone took one tiny inhale and forgot how to let it out. There wasn't a dramatic hush, no dropped champagne glasses, no gasps. Just this subtle but undeniable wave of altered gravity as heads turned, conversations thinned, and eyes began to follow us with the kind of curiosity normally reserved for car crashes and celebrity scandals. Blythe didn't cling to my arm like a date. She didn't smile or scan the room for validation. She walked beside me like we owned the floor, her posture liquid steel, her presence setting the temperature without asking permission. I barely recognized myself in the mirrored wall we passed. Hair clean cut, suit tailored, back straight like I hadn't carried Delaney's indifference for years. For the first time in a long time, I looked like a man with agency, not an accessory someone forgot they were wearing. And then there she was, Delaney. She was posted up near the bar, half turned toward the dance floor, chatting with 3 women in identical corporate dresses. But I saw it, that flicker, that jolt in her shoulder. She felt me before she saw me. When her eyes finally landed on mine, something in her stopped working. Her voice faltered. Her drink dipped in her hand. The woman next to her said something, but Delaney didn't respond. Then she saw Blythe, and the pause turned into paralysis. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. Her eyes bounced between us, trying to compute the image. Her invisible husband standing tall, confident, beside a woman who looked like she walked out of a luxury magazine and into a revenge opera. Delaney tried to smile. It didn't land. Blythe, naturally, smiled first. And not just any smile, the kind that knows it's already won the conversation before it starts. She leaned in just slightly, whispered out of the side of her mouth, "Would now be a good time to introduce myself as your upgrade?" I didn't laugh. I couldn't. My throat was tight, but not with nerves, with something more unfamiliar. Power, maybe. Or closure, beginning to crystallize into something sharp. We didn't walk toward Delaney. That would have been too easy. Instead, we passed her. Slowly. As if she wasn't the reason we were there. As if she were just another part of the furniture. A decorative, unnecessary piece left in the corner after a remodel. I could feel her watching us with the kind of burning intensity that turns into stories people whisper about long after the night is over. And just as we reached the middle of the room, a man stepped forward. Him. The guy. That guy. He had a jawline you could cut drywall with, and a blazer 2 sizes too tight, like he was afraid no one would notice his gym membership unless he flexed through silk. He smirked like someone who thought we were lost. "Hey there, can I help you find someone?" he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Blythe didn't miss a beat. "Yes," she said, eyes glinting. "We were looking for someone forgettable, but you'll do." His smile faltered. He looked at me, then back to her, confused. "Do I know you?" She leaned in. "You will." And then she turned and walked away, leaving him blinking like he'd just been hit by a memory he couldn't quite place. I followed her, pulse calm, hands steady. Behind me, I could feel Delaney starting to unravel, one thread at a time. But the unraveling? That was just beginning. I thought we were done making waves for the night. I figured walking past Delaney with Blythe on my arm had been the climax, that we'd sip a little wine, exchange some tight smiles with people who didn't know whether to congratulate or pity me, and leave before things turned uncomfortable. But I had underestimated Blythe. Not because she was unpredictable. No, she was exactly as dangerous as I remembered, but because I didn't realize just how deeply she'd sharpened her edges since the last time we crossed paths. And whatever storm she brought with her, I was now standing directly in the eye of it. After our dramatic pass through the center of the room, we slipped toward a quieter corner near the hors d'oeuvres table. Blythe grabbed a flute of champagne from a tray like it was her right, not a courtesy. I reached for one too, but she touched my wrist, firm, intentional. "Don't dull yourself yet," she whispered. "You're going to want to remember this clearly." Before I could ask what that meant, a voice crackled over the sound system. Fernley, ever the eager host, now standing near the tiny stage set up in front of the oversized barrel wall. He tapped his mic like a high school principal calling for order at a chaotic assembly. "Folks," he beamed, "thank you for coming tonight to celebrate the relaunch of our family business. We've got a short lineup of speakers before we open the floor to live music and dancing. And first up, well, she needs no introduction." My gut sank. The radiant Delaney Creighton. The crowd clapped. Fernley winked. Delaney, still rattled but too proud to decline a spotlight, walked up to the stage. She adjusted the mic with one hand and her necklace with the other, and gave that well-practiced, humble, but powerful smirk that used to make me feel lucky just to be standing beside her. Now it just looked like theater. She launched into a speech about brand partnerships, resilience after the fire, something about local artisans, but her words were as hollow as the applause that greeted them. People clapped out of obligation, not engagement. And then, Blythe stepped forward. Not onto the stage. No, she wasn't invited. But she walked up to the very front of the crowd, casually, as if drawn by curiosity. She waited for Delaney to finish, then tilted her head slightly and clapped with slow, deliberate rhythm, louder than the rest. A beat longer. Enough to turn heads. Delaney saw her. Saw me. Her smile faltered again, this time visibly. The spotlight caught her expression mid-blink, caught the microsecond her mask cracked. Blythe didn't say anything. Not yet. But the room noticed. She returned to my side like a lioness leaving a scent trail. I could hear whispers fluttering through the rows. Who was she? What just happened? Was that a challenge? I leaned in close, heart pounding. What are you doing? Breaking the mirror she's been using to admire herself, she said. And then, as if summoned by timing so perfect it felt scripted. He walked up. The other man. Overbite and ego in a blue blazer. He had that smug smirk people wear when they think they're controlling the room but don't realize they've stepped into someone else's trap. "I should have known you'd be here," he said to Blythe, his tone tight, with something between disdain and panic. "What is this? Round two?" Blythe didn't look surprised. She looked amused. "Funny," she said. "You still think you're in the game." "What is this?" he asked again, this time to me. I opened my mouth, but Blythe touched my arm. She stepped forward. "You see, darling," she said to him in a voice smooth as glass. "You broke the wrong woman once, and now you thought you could break another. But this time, the husband isn't as stupid as you hoped." Delaney was watching. Everyone was. She started walking toward us now, carefully, heels clicking like warning shots. She must have realized something was spiraling out of her control, and for a woman like her, that was unforgivable. "Blythe," she said when she reached us, voice tight. "This isn't your night." "No," Blythe replied, never breaking eye contact with Delaney's lover. "It's his." And just like that, she reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded envelope. White, thick, heavy. She handed it to me. "Open it," she said. I did. Inside were photographs. Not grainy snapshots, not blurry speculation. High-res, time-stamped. Him and Delaney. Together. In places that left little to the imagination. Hotels. Offices. One photo clearly taken in our kitchen. The breath left my lungs. "Where did you?" I started. "I know a good PI," she said, turning back to the other man. "One you should have remembered from Portland." I looked at Delaney. Her face was pale, drained. She wasn't blinking. She looked exactly like someone watching the world she built begin to shatter from a crack she didn't see forming. But I did, and I wasn't going to look away anymore. Delaney didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. And in a room filled with murmurs and shifting weight, that silence echoed louder than any microphone. She stood there staring at the photographs in my hands like they were on fire, like they might vanish if she just refused to acknowledge them. Her mouth opened once, then closed. Her eyes kept flicking around, searching the faces now slowly turning toward us. The expressions varied: confusion, intrigue, judgment, but not a single one looked impressed. The way people looked at her shifted in real time. It was subtle at first, barely there, but I saw it. She saw it too. That's what made her panic. She reached for my wrist, gently at first, then more insistently. "Wendell, let's go somewhere private. Please." Her voice cracked on the word please. I didn't move. I just looked at her, and I wasn't sure what expression I was wearing. Probably nothing. I felt like stone. "We don't need to do this here," she added, but her voice was smaller now. She had always been so composed in public, always calculated, careful with how she carried herself. But at that moment, standing next to a man whose jaw had fully locked in fear and a woman who looked like a goddess forged in vengeance, Delaney suddenly looked small. Fragile. Not powerful. Not polished. Just exposed. The crowd wasn't gathering, not like in a high school drama or viral TikTok. It was worse. It was quieter. People were trying not to stare, which only made their stolen glances more obvious. One woman fake-checked her phone while blatantly tilting it to snap a picture. Two men whispered and nodded toward the envelope still in my hand. Delaney noticed it all. That's when she cracked. "You're pathetic," she spat suddenly, just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "You always were." She was looking at me, but the words weren't meant for me. They were meant for them. For the crowd. A last-ditch attempt to rewrite the narrative. If she could reframe me as weak, bitter, irrational, then maybe she could claw back some dignity. Make it seem like I had orchestrated all this because I couldn't handle losing her. But she forgot one thing. She'd already lost the room. Blythe didn't even blink. She took a single step forward, her heels perfectly timed with Delaney's last word. "You shouldn't insult people who know how to read receipts." She held up her phone. Not dramatically, just a casual, confident lift of the screen. There, in full clarity, was a text conversation. Delaney's number. Her words. Her plans. "Wendell won't be at the party. He's still too dull to care. You'll love the place. Fernley's loaded and the wine's free. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's basically a background character." That last one. That stung. More than the photos. More than the affair. Because she was right. Or at least, she had been. I had let myself become a background character in my own life. I had dimmed every part of myself to make her feel brighter. And she didn't just fail to notice it, she resented me for it. Punished me for the very sacrifices she never asked for but greedily accepted. Did you really think you could talk your way out of this? Blythe asked quietly, with that calm, terrifying serenity she wore like armor. Still playing the victim? Still spinning the story while you're bleeding from your own narrative? Delaney's mouth was open, but no words came out. People had stopped pretending now. They were listening, watching. No one was coming to her defense. That's when the other man, the overbitten marketer in the blue suit, finally spoke. I didn't know about any of this, he said, stepping away from Delaney like she had suddenly become radioactive. I thought. You told me you were separated. Delaney's head snapped toward him. You said he was living in the guest room, he added, voice rising now, defensive. You lied to me. And you believed her? Blythe said with a dry laugh. Wow. Some marketer. He froze. His ego couldn't handle that hit. He turned and walked out without another word, leaving Delaney standing alone, shoulders slumped, eyes flickering wildly, like a woman trying to wake from a nightmare only to realize she's the one who built it. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her, the woman I had once written poems for, and said the last sentence I'd ever speak to her in public. Safe doesn't mean stupid. It just means I waited. And with that, I turned, Blythe beside me, and we walked away. But the night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. We didn't talk on the way back to Blythe's apartment. Not because there was nothing to say, but because the silence was too full. It pulsed. It buzzed. It almost had a temperature. The night air was thick with leftover adrenaline. The streetlights cast long, uneven shadows on the pavement, and Blythe sat beside me in the passenger seat, still and unreadable, like a chess player already planning 10 moves ahead. I gripped the wheel tighter than I needed to, my knuckles tight and white, not because I was nervous, but because I had just done something I never thought I was capable of. I had let someone fall on their own sword and watched without flinching. And yet, the moment we pulled into the parking garage under her building, the weight started shifting again. Not regret, not guilt, something colder, something unfinished. She unbuckled slowly and turned toward me. You held up better than I thought, she said. You didn't even blink when she tried to humiliate you. I think I ran out of humiliation about 2 years ago, I replied. Blythe smirked and opened the door, but then paused. You should know, people like her don't retreat. They reload. I didn't answer, but her words sat with me as I followed her upstairs. Her apartment was quiet, minimally decorated, all concrete and glass and dim warm lighting. She offered me a drink, but I declined. I wasn't ready to come down from whatever plane of existence we'd floated onto since that moment at the winery. I'll give you 5 minutes, she said, stepping out of her heels. Then I want the full breakdown of how it felt. But those 5 minutes turned into 10, because that's how long I sat staring at my phone once it buzzed. Blocked number. No caller ID. One voicemail. I didn't want to listen, but curiosity eats faster than fear. I hit play. At first, nothing. Then breathing. Then her voice, Delaney's. Except it wasn't angry. It wasn't frantic. It was calm. Too calm. You think you won tonight. That's what I wanted you to think. Do you really believe someone like Blythe does anything for free? Do you even know what you just got pulled into? My stomach turned. You embarrassed me. And I'll admit, I didn't expect you to have the spine for it. But do you really think Blythe came to help you? You really think you were the architect of this little performance? There was a pause. I could hear the clink of ice in a glass. She didn't show you the rest of the pictures, did she? Click. The voicemail ended. I froze. What rest of the pictures? I opened my messages. Nothing. Email. Still nothing. My hands started to sweat. I walked to the kitchen where Blythe was pouring herself wine like she hadn't just detonated my marriage in front of 200 people. Blythe? I said slowly, she just called me. She turned, unbothered. Let me guess. She's pretending she's still in control? She said, there were more pictures. Blythe raised an eyebrow. Did she tell you what they were of? No. She studied me for a long moment, then walked across the room, grabbed her clutch, and pulled out a second envelope, one she hadn't given me. She placed it on the table between us. I wasn't sure if you were ready for these. I stared at the envelope. My heart thudded loud enough to hear. What are they? She didn't answer. It's your choice. I opened it. Inside were 6 more photos. But they weren't of Delaney. They were of me. Old ones. Grainy security footage. One from a gas station parking lot at night. Another from outside my office building. One from last month, sitting in my car eating lunch. Someone had been watching me. All this time, someone had been tracking my routines, where I parked, when I left work, who I met with. I looked up at Blythe. What is this? Now her face shifted. The mask dropped a little. I told you I had history with him, she said, referring to Delaney's affair partner. What I didn't tell you is, I wasn't the only one he burned. I swallowed. You think he? I don't think anything, she cut in. But I know when people try to bury their enemies, they rarely check to see if the ground is dry. I sat down. Hard. Everything suddenly felt upside down. The revenge, the party, the photos, none of it had been as simple as I believed. I wasn't just some poor, betrayed husband making a power play at a fancy event. I had been handed a grenade. And now I didn't know if I'd pulled the pin, or if someone else already had. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. From a new number. No name. Just a message. You were never the target. But you walked into it anyway. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. That would have made sense. Fear has rules. This was something else. It was the kind of electric, crawling uncertainty that burrows into your chest and makes everything feel heavier than it is. I paced Blythe's apartment for hours, alternating between silence and questions she didn't always answer. She stayed calm. Too calm. Like a pilot flying through turbulence and casually sipping coffee. Around 3 a.m., I sat on her balcony wrapped in a throw blanket, trying to piece together what had actually happened, not just at the party, but the months, even years that led up to it. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped recognizing my own life. I had become a man reacting to things instead of steering anything. I had let someone like Delaney reshape me, not through cruelty, but neglect, and maybe worse. But now the glass was shattered, and I could finally see the whole room. By morning, Blythe had made coffee, and the sharpness she wore like armor had softened. I asked her directly about the photos, about who had been following me. She admitted it was a contingency. You were getting too passive, she said, and I needed to know if you were worth saving. I didn't know whether to thank her or be offended. But then she added something that changed everything. I was never trying to destroy her. I was trying to remind you what survival looks like. That hit harder than anything Delaney ever said. By noon, I was back at my house, or what used to be my house. Delaney was gone. Not permanently, but for the moment. She'd left a half-folded note on the kitchen table in rushed handwriting. I'll have the lawyer call you. I'm staying with my sister. I don't want to fight. I just want it over. No apology. No explanation. Just administrative cleanup. And somehow, that made me smile. Not out of spite. Out of freedom. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. Papers were filed. Property was divided. We didn't scream at each other. We didn't play games. It was cold and clean, like we were undoing a business merger instead of a marriage. But even that was a kind of gift. Because when all the noise stopped, I started to hear things again. Like the sound of my own thoughts. The hum of music I actually liked. The wind through my cracked office window. I started running again, not to punish myself, but to feel my legs move. I took longer walks. I started writing again. Not for anyone, just for myself. And Blythe? She didn't vanish. But she didn't stay, either. She left town 2 weeks later. Said she'd done what she came to do. No drama. No tension. She gave me a small box before she left. Inside was a deck of old playing cards, worn from use, and a note tucked beneath the Queen of Spades. Don't let anyone else deal you your next hand. You've earned the table now. I didn't text her after that. I didn't need to. Some people arrive in your life like wrecking balls. Others like wildfires. But Blythe? She was a controlled burn. She destroyed just enough of my old life to make room for something new to grow. 6 months later, I moved out of the house. Bought a small place upstate. Modest, quiet, with a porch that creaks in the morning and a view of the hills that looks like something out of a forgotten dream. I planted a garden. I adopted an old dog named Murphy who snores louder than thunder. Some days, I still think about Delaney. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just distance. Like a story I used to tell myself before I learned better. Because the truth is, I didn't just walk into that party with a stunning woman. I walked in as the man I forgot I could be. And when I left, I wasn't carrying shame or grief or betrayal anymore. I was carrying the piece of someone who survived the fire and finally knew what it meant to breathe.